Okay. So the reason why I'm recording this session is to make sure that whoever doesn't join early or joins later or doesn't even show up at all, we still have access to this class and will not miss out too much. All right. So, who wants to tell us the meaning of reproduction?
Now, so uh, you know contest. Um,
Hello, please kindly mute your mic as you're joining. Kindly mute your mic as you're joining. Kindly mute your mic as you're joining. And like I mentioned earlier, if I ask a question and you would like to answer, you can just use the emoji where you have to raise up your hand, okay? To avoid it, so we can maintain decorum and two people are not talking at the same time. So who wants to tell us the meaning of reproduction? Anybody? Does anybody want to tell us the meaning of reproduction? Okay. All right. So I will start then by defining reproduction.
no, I'm not talking.
Matilda, please mute your mic. Matilda, please mute your mic. Mute your mic as you're joining, Matilda.
Cross.
Okay. So I'm going to like to start by defining the word reproduction. And I would like you to take notes. You can just take notes, get key points down. At the end of this class, there's going to be Wisdom, please mute your mic. Wisdom, please mute your mic. Mute your mic as you're joining. So I'm going to be, if in the course of the explanation, if you have questions, please you can just write them down. At the end of the class, I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask your questions so we can tackle it together, okay? And also a quiz, an assignment will be made available at the end of this class. And I expect everyone to do the assignment and turn it in before the day close, before the final date of submission. Whenever you submit before the closing of the submission, I expect everybody to do the assignment. They are quite easy questions. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to start by defining the word reproduction. Please endeavor to take notes, okay? Endeavor to take notes. I don't expect you to write everything I say. And that's one of the reasons why we are recording this session, such that you can always go back to it and listen to the recorded version of the classes. So we can say that reproduction is defined as a process by which mature organisms produce offspring that are similar to them. Now, why am I using the words that are similar to them? For example, a goat cannot mate with a sheep. Even if they do mate, it cannot result in reproduction. So reproduction is something that has to occur between organisms that are similar. An human being reproducing with another human being, a goat reproducing with a goat, a sheep reproducing with a sheep, a lion mating with a lioness, a dog mating with another dog. Now that is the meaning of reproduction. I'm going to take the definition again. Reproduction is defined as a process by which mature organisms produce offspring that are similar to them. And when we say mature offspring, it means organisms that have reached the age of maturation. For example, a 10-day-old rat cannot produce. It's not because their reproductive organs are not yet fully developed. So when the rat attains the age of puberty, then that is when we can say that, oh, this rat is mature enough to begin the process of reproduction. Now, bringing it to human beings, a 5-year-old girl or a 5-year-old boy is obviously not mature enough for the process of reproduction. So until that 5-year-old boy or girl attains the stage of puberty, that boy or girl cannot perform the process of reproduction. They cannot reproduce in any way. So that is why I define reproduction as a process in which mature organisms produce offspring that are similar to them and they are physically independent of their parents. Now, Our topic encompasses human reproductive system. And when we say it encompasses the human reproductive system, what are we talking about? We are talking about the type of reproductions that human beings undergo. And what type of reproduction do human beings undergo? Human beings undergo sexual reproduction. Human beings undergo the process of sexual reproduction. And when we say sexual reproduction, we are talking about reproduction that involves the fusion of gametes. When I say fusion of gametes, it means there's fusion of sex cells. The sex cells are fused together. And if you're just joining, please kindly mute your mic. Kindly mute your mic if you're just joining. Kindly mute your mic. So when we talk about now in biology, there are two types of reproduction. We have sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. If you've not heard about the word sexual and asexual reproduction, signify with the raised hand emoji. If you've not heard about it, signify, so I can know how to say explain it to you. Okay, for the sake of those that probably don't know it, let me go through it. Now, in sexual reproduction involves the fusion of gametes. It involves, hello, please kindly mute your mic. Mute your mics, please. As you're joining, mute your mics.
I went to church.
Okay, I'm seeing a Fosa. Please kindly mute your mic, a Fosa. Okay, thank you. Thank you for muting your mic. So as I was saying, okay, someone still has their mic unmuted. Please mute your mic. Somebody still has their mic unmuted. Please mute your mics. Okay, so when we talk about the types of reproduction, there are two types of reproduction in biology. We have sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction involves the fusion of gametes, whereby a male sex cell or a male gamete fuses and unites with a female gamete. Unlike in asexual reproduction, it doesn't involve the fusion of gametes. It does involve the fusion of reproductive parts. For example, we have vegetative, is what some people call it, some can call it in plant vegetative propagation. In animals, we have like binary fusion and the likes. Now, for human beings undergo sexual reproduction. That is, the male sex cell unite and fuse with the female sex cell, and they give birth to their young ones alive. So we can say human beings are viviparous. If you've not heard about viviparous before, viviparous is just a process through which organisms give birth to their young ones alive. Now, some organisms reproduce by laying eggs. If you look at some reptiles, like the crocodiles, the snakes, how do they give birth to their young ones? They don't give birth to their young ones alive. They lay eggs. And these eggs, they incubate them and they hatch. And their offspring emerges from the shells that they've laid. Unlike in human beings and some animals like goats, sheep, lions, etc., that give birth to their young ones alive. So we can say human beings and some animals are viviparous. And what the process of reproduction in human beings, how does it work? It occurs as a result of fertilization, where the male sperm cell fertilizes the female the female ovum. And the cells will develop in the female and form a zygote. Now, there are some events that occurs in the process of reproduction. These events that leads to formation of gametes is called gametogenesis. When we are talking about gametogenesis, what are we talking about? We are talking about the process whereby gametes are formed in male and gametes are formed in females. How the sex cells are formed are in males and how the sex cells are formed in females. Now let's talk about the female reproductive system. So on this topic, we'll be studying both male and female reproductive system. So we are starting first with the female reproductive system. Now, this is what the female reproductive system looks like internally. Now, for the female reproductive system, we have the internal reproductive system and we have the external reproductive system. I will explain that as we go on. Now, the female reproductive system, internally, it is made up of ovaries. Can you see my screen? Okay, good. Thank you, Lucas. Now, the female reproductive system, it consists of the internal parts, consists of the ovaries. We have the oviduct, also called the fallopian tube. We have the uterus, commonly called the womb. In a layman's term, they call the uterus the womb. Now, that is for the internal part. Then the external part, we have the vulva, we have the clitoris. For the external part, we have the vulva, we have the clitoris. This is the external view. This is the external view of the female reproductive system. We have the clitoris, which is an organ of arousal in females. That is just its only function. Then we have the vagina. We have the vulva, which includes the labia minora and the labia majora. Hello, are you following? Like I said, if you have any questions as I'm explaining, please just note them down. At the end of the class, I'm going to ask you to unmute your mics and ask your questions, okay? So please just continue to follow up. Now, when we are talking about the female reproductive system, what are we saying? Let's start with the internal part. I'm going to start first with the vagina. Now, the vagina will be called a birth canal. Why? If you take a look at this, please mute your mic. Somebody's mic is not muted there. I think that is wisdom. Okay, I think I'm going to start muting you myself. I've told you to endeavor to mute your mic so that we don't create a distraction. Now, when we're talking about the vagina, like I mentioned earlier, is also called the birth canal. And what is the birth canal? It is the narrow canal through which a fetus is being delivered. And when we're talking about a fetus, what is a fetus? A baby. In layman's term, we say, oh, a baby. So this is the cervix, and we have the vagina. The vagina, like I mentioned earlier, it serves as a birth canal. So the vagina, we can say, is a muscular hollow tube that extends from the vaginal opening to the uterus. So the vagina is starting from the vaginal opening, that is the vaginal orifice outside, outwards to the uterus. And what are the functions? The functions of the vagina: sexual intercourse. It receives the penis during sexual intercourse. It receives ejaculates during sexual intercourse. And it serves as a pathway for a baby to be taken out of a woman's body during childbirth or child delivery. It also serves as a route for menstrual blood, that is periods, the female period, menses, to leave the body from the uterus. Let's talk about another internal organ, another female internal reproductive organ called the cervix. Now, what is the cervix? The cervix is just a part of the uterus that opens to the upper part of the vagina. And this is the cervix from the image I showed you earlier. This is the cervix. So the cervix leads into the uterus. Now, in the cervix, we have a structure called the internal os, OS, and the external os, spelled OS. Now, the cervix is the part that dilates when a woman is about to be delivered of a baby. You hear them. I don't know if you've heard doctors or nurses talking, and they are saying, oh, she's 1 centimeter dilated. The woman in labor is 2 centimeter dilated. And mind you, she is still going to 10 centimeter. So when they are talking about that dilation, and they're talking about the measurement in centimeter, they are talking about this place called the cervix. Naturally, it's a very, very small opening, a very small opening. But during the process of child delivery, during parturition, it begins to expand, it begins to dilate. When you hear the word dilate, what does dilate mean? Dilate means it expands. When something expands and opens up, so it begins to dilate to allow for the descent of the fetus during delivery. Another female internal reproductive organ that we have the uterus. Like I mentioned earlier, the uterus in the layman's term is called the womb. And when we are talking about the womb, what are we talking about? The womb is just a pear-shaped organ. How many of you know? I believe some of you know what a pear is. A fruit. That fruit's called pear, greenish. Now, the uterus is just like an inverted pear. You know, when you are holding the pear up, you have the stalk. You have the stalk. Let me see if I can give you a drawing of it. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Okay. Okay. Okay, this is it. The uterus here looks like an inverted pear. It looks like when you are holding the pear upside down. That is just how the uterus looks like. That is what the uterus looks like. It is shaped like an upside down pear, and it has a very thick lining. Now, the uterus is highly elastic because it's a small organ, like I mentioned, a pear shaped. But once a woman reaches the age of reproduction and she's conceived of a child, be it a single fetus or multiple fetuses, what happens to the uterus? The uterus begins to expand. As the baby is growing in the woman's uterus, in the woman's womb, the uterus begins to expand and enlarge to be able to accommodate the growing fetus. So that is why we say that the uterus is highly elastic, and also it is muscular. It has a thick muscular wall. And where can we find the uterus? The uterus is found between the urinary bladder and the rectum. And the uterus is divided into 4 parts. We have the fundus, the body, the cervix, and the cervical canal. Now, this is the body of the uterus, the fundus. This is the cervix, and then we have the cervical canal. Now, the fundus of the uterus is the upper broader part, and it receives the fallopian tube. And it receives the fallopian tube. And the body of the uterus is the middle portion, while the cervix is the long, lower narrow part that leads into the vagina. And it communicates with the vagina via the external os and with the uterus via the internal os. That's the os. I mentioned earlier about the cervix during my explanation. Now, the wall of the uterus, I said it is muscular. The wall of the uterus is made up of 3 types of muscles, of 3 muscular layers. Let me put it that way. Of 3 muscular layers. These muscular layers are the perimetrium, the myometrium, and the endometrium. Now, the perimetrium is the outer lining, while the myometrium is the middle lining, is the part that becomes that is more elastic. The myometrium is the part that is more elastic in nature. And then we have the last one, the endometrium. What is the endometrium? The endometrium is the part that becomes thickened and shed monthly that leads to menstruation. That is the endometrium. Now, when we are talking about pregnancy and the uterus stretching, during pregnancy, the uterus stretches to accommodate the developing fetus, and it forms also the placenta for development. So let's go to the next one. We have the fallopian tube. I said that the fallopian tube, we can also call it the oviduct. We can also call the fallopian tube the oviduct. And what's the fallopian tube? It connects the uterus to the ovaries. So this is the oviduct, the fallopian tube labeled here. Now, the oviducts are a pair. We have one on each side, one on the right, and one on the left. and the extent, each is funnel shaped. It looks like a funnel. You know, a funnel, I believe you must have seen a funnel before. A funnel has an open end. It has two open ends, where once you're pouring something from one end, it's coming out from the other end. So usually the fallopian tube is funnel shaped and it is not closed. Are we following? If you are following, please signify. If you are following, signify. Okay, thank you, Lucas. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Sinoman. Okay. All right, let's go on. Now, each of these funnel shaped parts, the oviduct, okay, let me continue by saying the fallopian tube is divided into three parts. We have the infundibulum, the ampulla, and we have the finger-like projections called the fibrae. So the fibrae is the part that is in connection with the ovary. These are the ovaries. This is the right and left ovary. We have the fibrae is a part that is a finger-like projection that is in contact with the ovary. And what's the function of that part of the fallopian tube? It is responsible for picking up the eggs that are released. The ova, the female egg that is released from the ovary. The fibrae picks it up and sweeps it into the fallopian tube. Now, that is the function of the fibrae. Then we have the middle portion called the ampulla of the fallopian tube. Now, what's the function of the ampulla? The ampulla is where fertilization takes place. The ampulla is where fertilization occurs. And it is let me say the ampulla is the normal site of fertilization. That is where fertilization occurs. Now, when fertilization now occurs in the ampulla of the fallopian tube, what happens next? The zygote that is now formed will now migrate. It will move from the fallopian tube into the uterus, where it embeds itself to the wall of the uterus and pregnancy begins. I don't know if you've ever heard about ectopic pregnancy. If you've heard about ectopic pregnancy, please signify. How many of you have heard about ectopic pregnancy before? If you've heard about ectopic pregnancy, please signify. Okay, no one has heard about ectopic pregnancy. Okay, thank you, Sinoma. You've heard about ectopic pregnancy. So, which means just one person have heard about ectopic pregnancy. Now, let me tell you what ectopic pregnancy is. Ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy whereby the fetus, the embryo, is embedded in the wall of the fallopian tube. You know, I mentioned earlier that fertilization takes place in the ampulla. And once fertilization has occurred, the resulting embryo, it migrates and moves from the fallopian tube into the uterus. Now, when the zygote does not migrate from the fallopian tube to the uterus and continues to stay in the fallopian tube, that is what is called an ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy can occur in any part of the fallopian tube. It can occur around the ampulla, around the infundibulum, or anywhere outside the uterus. And it is a life-threatening condition. So an ectopic pregnancy is an abnormal pregnancy. But most times it normally occurs in the fallopian tube because that is where fertilization takes place. Okay. So the next internal reproductive organ we're going to talk about the ovaries. The ovaries, the female ovaries. Now, the ovaries are two oval-shaped organs, and they lie to the upper right and upper left of the uterus. So these are the ovaries. These are the ovaries, and they are present on each side. As you can see, they are present close to where the fibrae of the fallopian tube is. Now, the ovaries are primary sex organs. Why do we call them primary sex organs? Because when the baby is in the uterus and the baby is a female, these ovaries are responsible for releasing some hormones that will make sure that the baby continues to develop as a female, not as an hermaphrodite. An hermaphrodite is a person, an individual or a fetus, or that has both male and female reproductive system, or both male and female sexual characteristics, which may be primary sexual characteristics or maybe secondary sexual characteristics. Now, each ovary has something called a stroma that is wrapped around what we call an epithelium. Now, we have a structure called the Graafian follicle. And this Graafian follicle, they contain a large ovum, which are surrounded by many cells called follicle cells. And these follicle cells, when they are mature, they produce the female hormone, they secrete the female hormone estrogen. You know, in females, we have two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone is commonly called the pregnancy hormone. When progesterone level is low in a pregnant female, it could result in an abortion, what is called a spontaneous abortion, where the fetus is forcefully ejected out of the uterus owing to uterine contraction because there is low level of progesterone. Please note that spontaneous abortion is different from induced abortion. Induced abortion is the one that is performed either with a drug or performed surgically. This one is induced. Nothing is wrong. It is the individual that has decided to induce abortion and expel the fetus. But in the process of spontaneous abortion, in spontaneous abortion, the fetus is ejected forcefully because of hormonal levels, especially when levels of progesterone is low. Now, the cortex of the ovary contains, like I mentioned earlier, matured cells called follicle. Now, this matured cells follicle, they also have some cells that are called the corpus luteum. And these cells of the corpus luteum, they secrete progesterone during pregnancy. They secrete progesterone during pregnancy, and they degenerate eventually. Now, what are the functions of the ovaries? The ovaries function primarily to secrete estrogen, the two female hormones that I mentioned earlier, estrogen and progesterone, which helps in the development of secondary sexual characteristics in females. When we are talking about secondary sexual characteristics in female, what are we talking about? We are talking about sexual development during puberty. For example, development of breasts, onset of menstruation. So those are the two things that the female estrogen and progesterone are majorly involved with. Now let's go to the external reproductive system of the female, where we have the likes of the vulva, we have the likes of the clitoris. All right, so when we're talking about the clitoris, what are we talking about? The clitoris is a small sensory organ. This is the clitoris. This is it. The clitoris is a small sensory organ that is located towards the front of the vulva, where the folds of the labia join. You know, we have the labia minora and we have the labia majora. This is it on the screen. This is it on the screen. So when we're talking about the clitoris, it's an erectile organ that is highly sensitive. It's quite sensitive. And like I mentioned, it's located at the junction of the labia minora and the junction of the labia majora. And what is the function of the clitoris? The only function of the clitoris, the one and only function of the clitoris, is that it aids arousal of female during copulation. So the clitoris does not perform any function aside arousal in females. It has no known function. If you've heard about the word female genital mutilation before, you should know what I'm talking about. In female genital mutilation, the part that is majorly cut off in females that are genitally mutilated is the clitoris. They cut off the clitoris such that when the woman is engaging in sexual intercourse, she will not feel aroused. So that is what happens in female genital mutilation. Then we have the urethra. The urethra is the canal that brings urine from your urinary bladder to the outside of your body. Then we have the labia minora and the labia majora, which in time I put together to be called the labia. These are what we call the inner lips and the outer lips that surround the vaginal opening. The inner lips, which is usually thinner, and the outer lips, the labia majora, which is usually thicker. So the thicker lips is the labia majora, and the thinner one, the thinner lips that is inside is called the labia minora. Then we also have the anus. What is the function of the anus? The anus is just an opening through which feces, fecal matter passes out of the body. It's just a way through which fecal matter passes out of the body. Okay? I think that is all we have for the female reproductive system. Let's talk about the male reproductive system now. Please signify if you're following. All right, thank you. So I'm going to take a pause here and mark the attendance. I'm going to take a pause here to mark the attendance. Please unmute your mics. Unmute your mic. Kindly unmute your mic so I can hear you speak. Okay. Do we have Sharon in class? Anybody named Sharon? I'm supposed to have 18 students in this class. Let me see how many do I have. I think I have about 6 or 7. 6, okay? All right, so unmute your mics and let's take the attendance. Anybody named Sharon? Okay. Anybody named Joshua? Is Joshua present? Okay, Joshua is absent. Do we have Hillary in class? I think I have Hillary in class. Anybody? Hillary? Okay, Hillary is absent. Okay, I have somebody named Osazuwa. Anybody named that? I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. I apologize. Okay. Yes, absent. Do we have Jessica? Is Jessica in class? Do we have Jessica in class? Okay, Jessica is absent. Do we have Jubem Emma in class? Do we have Jubem Emma in class? Okay, absent. Okay. Do we have Praise? Imwetia Praise in class? Do I have that person in class? Okay. Do I have Odalo Golden in class? Golden, are you in class? Okay. Do we have David in class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. David is present. Do we have Obawumi in class? Is Obawumi in class?
Lucky is in class too.
What did you say? Is that Obawumi?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have Rejoice Michael in class? Rejoice Michael. Okay, Rejoice Michael is absent. Okay. Do we have Gospel
Lucky is
Victoria in
present too.
class? I don't think I've gotten to Lucky. Gospel Litoya, are you in class? Okay, absent. Rejoice Michael, are you in class? Okay, absent.
No.
Is Isiri in class? Isiri, yeah, Isiri. Is Isiri in class? Okay, absent. Is Onai Wazazi in class? I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Okay, I'm assuming you are absent. Is success in class?
I'm here. Let me
Okay, okay. I've marked you present. Is success in class? Okay, success is absent. Is precious in class? Is precious in class? Okay, yes, precious is absent. Is Efe in class? Anybody named Efe? Okay, Efe is absent. So how many people do I have in class? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right then. Okay. Sorry, it's marked you absent. It's marked everybody absent. Please give me a moment. Let's go through this again,
Lucky is
please.
present. Oh,
Sharon,
Lucky
is
is
Sharon
present.
present? Lucky. Did I find your name on this
Present.
list? Just give me a moment, Lucky. I don't think I have your name on this list.
Then he's supposed to be now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check.
I'm going to take this attendance
Let's check
again.
out.
Is Sharon present? Okay, Sharon is absent. Is Joshua present? Absent. Is Hilary present? Okay, absent. Osazua, you're present? Please unmute your mic. So unmute your mics and respond. Is Osazua present?
Ma,
Okay, you're present. Is Jessica present? Jessica is absent. Is Duben present? Okay, absent. Is Praise present?
Bobby.
Praise, are you present?
Nice.
Okay, absent. Is go what? Is Praise present? Is okay, absent. Is Golden present? Okay, Golden is absent. Is David present?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is Obawumi present? Okay, Obawumi is absent. Is Rejoice present? Rejoice, are you present in class? Okay, you're absent. Is David present?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is Gospel present? Gospel, are you present? Gospel is absent. Rejoice, Michael, are you present? Okay, absent. Asiri, are you present?
Siri.
Okay, present, right? Okay, I think Osazi said he's present earlier. Success, are you present? Precious, are you present? Okay, Precious is absent. Efe, are you present? Okay, Efe is absent. Present. Just give me a moment while I sort out your attendance.
Ma,
Yes?
Ekwage Lucky is present. Oh.
Lucky. Oh, you didn't hear your name on the attendance?
Yes, ma.
Okay, Lucky. I don't see anybody named Lucky here.
Egwage. Egwagelo. Egwageloki.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Let me go through it again. Okay, I don't see any Lucky. I don't see anyone with that name here.
Egwage. Egwage.
Your name is not on this list. I'm sorry, but I will have your name. I will note down your name.
Egwage.
Oh, see, you go write am down. Make I note.
Okay, I'm not seeing any Lucky here. I'm not seeing anyone with that name. I'm not seeing anyone with that name here. But I'll note down your name and inform the admin. I'll note down your name and inform the admin. Lucky, I got down your name. So we have Osazua present, Ayuba David present. We have Isiri present. We have Ozaze present. Okay. All right, that is all for the attendance. You can mute your mics. Let's mute our mics and let's go on with the class. We're talking about the male reproductive system. This is what the male internal reproductive system looks like. The internal reproductive system, we have organs like the scrotum, the testes, the seminiferous tubule, the epididymis, the vas deferens, the seminal vesicle, the prostate gland, the Cowper's gland. We have the urethra. These are the male internal reproductive system. The external reproductive system for male, we have the penis and we have the scrotum. So this is an overview, a diagram, an overview of what the male reproductive system looks like. Let me zoom out. So we have the vas deferens, also called the ductus deferens. We have the epididymis. We have the testicle. On the testes, we have the penis, the scrotum, the urethra, and we have the prostate gland. These are the organs that we have for the male reproductive system. Now let's start with the penis. Now, the penis has a dual function. When we say dual function, it means two. It performs two functions. One, it is responsible for excretion of urine. When the male wants to urinate, they urinate through their penis. And it is also responsible for, it also performs reproductive function. When we say reproductive function, what does this mean? It means that the male is able to reproduce using their penis. And through the penis, the ejaculate comes out for reproduction to take place. Now, the penis is made up of tissues that are called spongy tissues. And these tissues can expand and they can contract. That is why the male is able to have an erection and the penis becomes stiff and erect when this spongy tissue becomes filled with blood. And when the male is no longer aroused, what happens? The penis becomes flaccid. The penis has some parts. It has the main portion, which is the shaft. It has the glands of the penis, which is the head of the penis, which contains the urethral orifice. It also contains a structure called the prepuce. The prepuce of the penis is what is circumcised in males during male circumcision. Then let's talk about the testicles, also called the testes. You can call it testicles or you call it testes. And what is it? The testes are a pair of small oval structures and they are suspended in the scrotum. The testicles are two, one on the right, one on the left. So they are suspended in the scrotum. The scrotum are two sacs, they are two, and they are responsible for holding in the testes or testicles. Now, each testis is enclosed in a protective coat and it has abundant blood vessels. And what's the function of the testis? The function of the testis is to produce the male sex cell or the male gamete called sperm or spermatozoa. They also produce hormones, the male sex hormones, like called testosterone and the androgenic hormones. Testosterone is the principal hormone that the testicles is responsible for releasing. And this testosterone is responsible for development of secondary sexual characteristics in males. What are these secondary sexual characteristics? Development of hair around the beard, around the pubic region, enlargement of the penis, enlargement of the testicles. These are examples of male secondary sexual characteristics, and also deepening of voice. You see that boy that his voice is sounding like that of a 4-year-old child. All of a sudden, when the boy attains puberty and secondary maturation begins to occur, you hear the boy's voice is sounding like bass, and you're like, this boy of yesterday, see how your voice is sounding now like that of a full-grown adult man. So the testosterone is responsible for this function. Then we have the scrotum. The scrotum is like a pouch that is present outside the body. It's a pouch-like structure that is present outside the body in which the testes are suspended. The testicles are suspended inside the scrotum. Now, what's the function of the scrotum? The scrotum acts like a thermoregulator. It helps to regulate the temperature of the testicles. And why? The testicles, now the body temperature, the normal human body temperature is around 37.5 degrees. But the testicles need to be kept at a much more lower temperature for viability of the sperm. That is why, depending on the weather, the structure or the appearance. Please mute your mic. I'm hearing background noise. Mute your mic. Okay, got you muted. All right, so depending on the temperature, the appearance of the scrotum changes. Now, in cold weather, when the weather is cold, that is when the temperature is low, the scrotum becomes wrinkled. It becomes wrinkled and kits up together, moves up closer to the body to receive warmth. But in hot weather, what happens to the scrotum? It relaxes, and you see it just dangling. You see the scrotum dangling, just dangling. That is the function of the scrotum. It performs thermoregulatory function. When the weather is cold, it shrinks and becomes wrinkled and moves closer to the body to keep the testicles warm. When the weather is hot, it moves away from the body and dangles. Another male reproductive structure that we are going to talk about, the internal reproductive structure, we have the seminal vesicles. The seminal vesicle is a sac-like structure. It's a sac-like structure, and it adds an alkaline fluid to the semen. Now, the seminal vesicle stores sperm until they are ejaculated. Now, the alkaline fluid that is secretes and adds to the semen, what is the function of this alkaline fluid? It provides energy and nourishment for the sperm cells, for them to be able to move, for them to be able to have energy to move around in the female reproductive tract up until where conception can take, fertilization and conception can take place. And they are attached to the vas deferens on the side of the bladder. Then we have another structure called the vas deferens, also called the sperm duct or ductus deferens. What does it look like? The vas deferens is a muscular tube that passes upward along the testicles, and the function is to transport sperm. The transport sperm, they carry sperm from the epididymis to the seminal vesicle. Talking about the epididymis, what's the epididymis? They are coiled tube. They are coiled tube that are attached to the testes, and their function is to store sperm temporarily. They store sperm, they serve as a temporary storage for sperm, and they also serve as a passage for the transportation of sperm from the testes. Then we have the prostate gland. The prostate gland is it's like it's walnut shaped. It looks like a walnut, and its secretion also forms part of the semen constituent. The secretion of the prostate gland is alkaline in nature, and it accounts for sperm mobility and also viability of the sperm. And it surrounds the ejaculatory duct and is present just below the bladder. That is why if a male has prostate enlargement, if the prostate gland of a male is enlarged, one of the first symptoms that male is going to experience is painful urination, or the feeling of they want to urinate and nothing is coming out, or they've urinated and it feels like something is still left there and they are not done urinating. So that is why one of the symptoms of prostate enlargement is bladder issues. It's because of the location of the prostate gland. All right, then we have the urethra. The urethra is a channel that carries semen to the outside of the body through the penis, and it also serves as a passage for urine as it leaves the bladder. I'm talking about the bladder. The bladder is just an organ that collects urine or stores urine that is produced in the kidney. Then we have the foreskin. I mentioned the foreskin earlier. I mentioned something earlier called prepuce. The prepuce is the foreskin. In an uncircumcised male, you will still see it present. But in a circumcised male, the prepuce will no longer be present. All right. Let's see what else we have to talk about. Oh, I forgot to mention the Cowper's gland. Oh, I've stopped sharing my screen. The Cowper's gland, when we're talking about the Cowper's gland is also called the bulbourethral gland. And they are just tiny glands in which their secretion, they secrete seminal fluid also, that is also alkaline in nature. And the function is it helps to neutralize the acidity in the environment of the urethra before ejaculation. Now, the reason why the urethra is acidic is to prevent the growth of microorganisms. So, in the process whereby the semen is passing through the urethra to come out, that acidity can affect the viability of the sperm. So that is why there are secretions from the Cowper's gland that help to neutralize the acidity in the urethra. Now, we cannot talk about the function, reproduction, without talking about fertilization. When we're talking about fertilization, I mentioned fertilization at the beginning of the class, where I say it is the process whereby there is a fusion of the male sex cell and the female sex cell to form a zygote. And I mentioned that it occurs in the ampulla region of the fallopian tube. So now the process of fertilization is divided into two phases. The first phase where there's fusion of gametes, and the second phase is where there's cleavage and implantation. In the fusion of gametes, the egg is already there, the ovum, the female egg is already there. Then the sperm arrives. When the sperm arrives, it becomes capacitation occurs. When capacitation occurs, the zygote, there is cleavage and implantation. And when we're talking about cleavage and implantation, what does it mean? It means that the zygote undergoes rapid cell division. And the early division of the zygote is called cleavage. This cleavage involves now develops into the blastocell, the blastocyst, and then there's development of embryo. Then we also have the placenta. The placenta is part of the organs that is formed after conception has taken place. And what is the function of the placenta? The placenta has two parts, the maternal part and the fetal part, the part belonging to the baby. Now, what's the function of the placenta? The placenta just functions primarily to provide nutrients and nourishment and elimination of waste and exchange of gases between the mother and the fetus. That is just the primary function of the placenta. And after delivery, the placenta is no longer useful to the baby. That is why it is cut, excised, and discarded. All right. So I'm going to do a brief overview on what we just talked about. Let me share my screen again. Okay. Can you see my screen? If you can see my screen, please signify. Send an emoji if you can see my screen. Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So let's go through the images of the female reproductive system. I said the female reproductive system has an external and internal part where we have the uterus, fallopian tube, the ovary, the cervix, the vagina, the clitoris, the labia minora, and the labia majora. And then for the male reproductive system, we have the internal part and the external part. The only external part for the male reproductive system is the penis. And these are the internal part, the internal reproductive male organs, the seminal vesicle, the vas deferens, epididymis, the testes, also called testicles, the scrotum, and the prostate gland. So this brings us to the end of our session today. This brings us to the end of the class. So I'm going to open, you can unmute your mic now and start asking questions. Okay, if you have a question, please signify by raising up your hand. Use the hand emoji. Any question? Unmute your mics, please. Please unmute your mics. Does this mean everyone understands what I've talked about? Okay, if you understand what I've talked about so far, use an emoji. Use a reaction, react. Okay, I'm seeing 3 to 4 people. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask questions then. Since you understand, I'm going to ask questions. At the beginning of the class, I asked, what is the meaning of reproduction? And nobody could answer that question. And I defined reproduction and I explained it. So who wants to tell us the meaning of reproduction? Can anybody volunteer to tell us the meaning of reproduction? Anybody? Okay. No one wants to tell us the meaning of reproduction. Okay. All right. Who wants to tell us the function of the penis in male, the male reproductive organ? Who wants to tell us the function of one of the male external reproductive organ, the penis? Can anybody tell us about that?
Used for urinating.
Okay, used for urinating. Thank you for that. Who wants to tell us the second function that the penis performs? Everybody tell us the second function the penis performs. It performs just 2 functions, and someone has mentioned one, used for urinating. The second function. Okay, I'm listening. Please go on. Okay, for reproduction. Okay, that is good. Okay, yes, to reproduce. Thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you, ma.
Who Who can tell me the hormones that the male releases? Which hormones does the male sperm secrete? The hormones that I said is responsible for secondary sexual characteristics, where the male start growing beard, start growing hair around the pubic region, changes in the voice. Which hormone is responsible for that development in males? What is the name of that hormone?
Testosterone.
Testosterone.
Okay, testosterone. Okay, that is good. Okay, talking about the female reproductive system, what is the function of the clitoris? The function of the clitoris in the female reproductive system? Anybody? Can anybody tell us the function of the female reproductive system, clitoris, the organ, the clitoral part of the female reproductive system, the clitoris?
Sexual harassment.
What?
Sexual harassment.
It's sexual arousal. It's responsible for sexual harassment. Okay, thank you. All right. What's the function of the uterus? The function of the uterus in females? The womb. What the layman call the womb, the uterus. What's the function?
To carry child.
Okay, all right. What hormones do the ovaries secrete? The ovaries, the female egg. What hormones does it secrete? Anybody? Anybody? It secretes the hormone estrogen and progesterone. And I said progesterone is the pregnancy hormone. Estrogen is responsible for development of female secondary sexual characteristics, like development of breasts, growth of hair in the pubic region, enlargement of hips. You see the girl that looks like figure one before, all of a sudden she's bringing out curves. Is the hormones are responsible for that. All right. So we have golden in class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me see if that tallies with what I have on here. I want to go through the attendance again, just to be sure. Okay, I have 5 people present. Osazua is present. David is present. Isiri is present. Osazi is present. So aside Lucky, who else didn't hear their name in the attendance? Aside Lucky. Okay. I think I'm seeing Golden. I don't think. Oh, Golden, I marked you absent. And you are present. Okay, who else? Okay. So I now have 6 people present. All right then. So there is I have 2 things for you to do. The first one is the quiz. And the second one is an assignment. I believe you all have access to your dashboard, to your own portal. You can unmute your mics now. Let's interact. You can unmute your mics now. Let's interact. Please unmute your mics and let's interact. Okay, I believe you all have access to your dashboard, your
Yes, yes.
assignment. You have assignments.
That
You have
is
an
Yes.
assignment on reproductive
yes.
system in humans, and the assignment is due 7th of April. It's due 7th of April, and 7th of April is next week Tuesday. So please endeavor to go through the assignment and have it done and submitted in time. Late submission
Okay.
is not allowed. And you also have a quiz. This quiz is just general knowledge in biology, and it covers topics like cell theory, homeostasis, ecology, and ecosystem. So you should endeavor to go through this quiz and have it done too. So in the absence of questions, I think it's okay to bring the class to an end. Or do we have any questions for our venture? Any questions?
Well, that's good.
Okay. Lucas, you said yes. Do you have a question? Lucas, David, do you have a question? Because I'm seeing yes in the chat box.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess, okay. All right, that will be all for today. So our next class is on Saturday, 7 p.m. Please endeavor to come early. Endeavor to come early and show up early. And I'm going to be asking questions on what we did today. So in our next class, endeavor you come prepared. I don't expect you to get 100% of everything that we've talked about today. That's one of the reasons why the class is being recorded, so you can go through it. And that's also why I ask you to try to take down notes, so you'll be able to make reference to it later. So in our next class, I'll be asking questions. Please come prepared. Okay? So I'll see you in our next class. Bye, everyone.
Bye.